I mean, I think that every single person needs to be able to sprint at least 100 yards. You you just have to. It's just a necessity of life. If you were in a really shitty situation, there's a recent video that's going viral on the internet where a semi truck comes off the side of the road and this lady grabs her baby and starts sprinting. If you don't have the ability to do that because you're too obese or too out of shape, like that's a big problem.
No substitution for putting in hard work. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be successful, but not that many people actually want to put in the sweat, the tears, and the sacrifice to get to where they want to be.
Hey folks, we've got another exciting episode here of the Hard to Kill podcast. I am chatting with Jason Khalipa. Jason is a dad, a BJJ champ, CrossFit box owner, podcaster, and can clean and jerk 355 pounds. Now that's what I got from Wikipedia, Jason. So if that's changed, you're going to have to update our audience. But more importantly, your 2008 CrossFit Games world champion. It was my intro to CrossFit because I didn't know what was going on in 2008. And then I saw these crazy bunch of maniacs doing these crazy workouts at a ranch in sand, in the dirt.
Keep it up, go! Let's win this shit!
And I got hooked. So Jason, this has been a long time coming. I've been following your career since 2008, and you've been a real inspiration for me, and I'm sure a lot of the folks out there too who've been following CrossFit as well. And now you're shifting gears, and you've got a great podcast, and I want to chat about a bunch of different things, obviously your career, but also what you're doing now and all the awesome stuff that you're doing in the fitness space. So Jason, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I don't know exactly what Wikipedia said. You cut out for like a brief second. So I'll just assume it's right. And no, all is good. I think my journey has been interesting with fitness. I was dedicated for a long time to becoming the fittest on earth. And now my goals have really shifted a little bit as, you get older. Here's the thing, like I saw this thing online. It was like, I don't know, it's kind of corny, but it makes sense. It was like a what do you call it? Like a caterpillar. And then it turned into a butterfly. And it was like, you've changed. Well, it's like, no shit. We're supposed to change over time. And I think that sometimes I get stuck in this idea that like who I was is who I am. But it's like, you need to evolve, you need to grow, and your interests change. And that's okay. Where my interests were lied when I was 21 years old is going to be different than where my interests are when I'm 37 with 2 kids. And if they didn't change, I actually think that would be kind of weird. But so that's kind of where I'm at in my life. It's like I have different interests than I used to, yet I still have a lot of the same interests. I still love to train hard. I still love to get after it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Biology has basically 2 states, growth and death. And if you're not growing and changing, well, you're probably not going anywhere fast. And that's a message I really like to convey too. So, Jason, I said before we hit record, I might embarrass you a little bit. Probably not. It's not that bad. But I haven't shared this with anybody, so this is a first. I create a list of people I wanted to chat with in my life, whether it's on the podcast or not. Ideally, podcast, yes, but that's kind of just my own professional development and gets me out of my shell because, believe it or not, I'm really kind of an introvert. And I hate kind of reaching out, but I do it anyways because I know it's good for me talking about growth. So I'm just going to share here my Dream 100 list. So let me just
You have 100 people on the list?
Dude, I have 101.
Bro, 100? That's a lot of people, man. Like,
yeah. I don't fuck around, Jason. I don't fuck around. Okay, so here we go. I hope you can see this.
It's
So,
coming. It's coming.
okay, it's buffering. Okay, so right now, folks, I know some of you are going to be listening on like audio. So I've got my Dream 100 list. So at number, and this is in no order of precedence. I
I
just
was gonna
want you to
say
know.
I made it to number 33, huh?
You made it to number 30, 33. And I would just write people down that I found interesting as I went through the list. And I got, I got some heavy hitters here, but yeah, you came in under the top 50. I got Goggins on here, and the ones in green I've already talked to already, which I'm very appreciative of. But yeah, man, so you're number 33 on the list. So this list was created like 3 years ago, just so you know. And I'm at, I think, yeah, I'm at 101. As new guys and gals pop up, I throw them on there. So yeah.
Yeah, the Echelon Front crew would be great. I went out and I took one of their courses. I actually talked to Leif Babin this morning for a while. And I love working with those guys. Those guys are awesome. So, and Jocko's super cool. I just got done actually spending a lot of time with him. So hopefully you'll one day get a chance to talk to them.
Well, you know what, man? I never thought, well, the fact that I'm chatting to you is amazing. But even when I just got started because I didn't know what to do with my life. I was sitting in my basement. Like I told you before we hit record, I went from the military to teaching high school science and math to leaving that career. And then I got fired from a tech job that I wasn't suited for. And then I was just sitting around, like bumming around. And I said, man, what the hell am I going to do with my life? So I started writing a book and a podcast and training people. And the podcast has been probably the best thing I ever did, because within episode 14, I was already talking to Kelly Starrett, who I'm sure you probably know. And I was like, holy shit. I just wrote him an email and he said, yeah, sure, I'll come on this like random dude's podcast. And that just opened up my world. So it's been a hoot since starting. And I know the people that get to listen get the benefit, but more importantly, like this is like free. This is like free. Initially it was like free therapy for me, but now I just get to download your experience. And that's what we'll get into, man. Like, how did you go from, and so, I mean, Wikipedia is pretty good to get to know you just at a basic level. Like, you were an athlete in high school, you were a shot putter, but you went from that and you transitioned to one of the fittest human beings on the planet. What was that progression like? How did you even get to know what CrossFit was? Because it's pretty obscure to starting out. And then you're, winning the games in 2008.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so I competed professionally in CrossFit for about a decade. I found CrossFit in 2006. So I was working at a conventional gym at the time. I was doing a lot of Muay Thai and bodybuilding at the time. And then I found CrossFit. I was introduced to it from a buddy of mine and really fell in love with it. Fell in love with the idea of a coach, a community, and started competing in it. Ended up having some really early success. Ended up opening a gym, kind of evolving from there, right? I taught seminars for CrossFit. I opened gyms. I competed professionally for the next, decade or so. Just really dedicated my life to it. And coming out of high school, when I was in high school, I played football. I also threw the shot, and I had some opportunities in college, but I just didn't apply myself the right way in terms of sports. And I ended up at a junior college for a little bit. And I ended up at a 4-year university. And at the time I was working full time at the gym and I was not playing any type of collegiate sports. And I just, like I said, I found CrossFit. I really dove deep into it and it became something that I really dedicated my life to for the next 15 years, 10, 12 years.
So what does that look like? Because that's something I've been curious about. I've never talked to a high level CrossFit athlete, having watched it and having been to the box and being more like a weekend warrior. It crushes me just to do 2-3 workouts a week. In order to get to the level that you're at and then continue that into the mid, I think you finished in 2014, 2015 was your last games. How do you?
2015 was my last games.
2015 was your last games. What does that training look like? Are we talking like 7 days a week here? How does that fit into your schedule?
The answer is yes, for sure.
Okay.
If you think about CrossFit as a sport, it's very unique because it incorporates quite a few layers. So like, for example, if you want to be the best football player in the world, you need to train football and then do some additional strength conditioning. If you want to be the best, wrestler in the world, the best swimmer in the world, you need to train your sport and then do some additional strength conditioning. The struggle with CrossFit is that you're trying to be the best gymnast, weightlifter, swimmer, biker, runner, climber, whatever in the world. Now, obviously, those people who specialize in that are going to be better than them. But the idea is that you have a lot of facets you're trying to develop. So, for example, typical training would, you'd wake up in the morning, you do some fasted cardio for, let's just say, an hour. then you'd wait a couple hours, you do like a traditional 2-hour CrossFit session with strength conditioning. And then at night you would do some stamina training. And then maybe twice a week, 3 times a week, you would do long, slow distance training. So you'd go run 20 miles, you'd go swim for a mile. So there's a lot of training volume that incorporated it. And so that was what I did for better part of a decade, right? Was I segmented my day into 3 sessions. I did that probably 6 days a week, and I would have 1 day of long, slow distance training. If anything, I think I might have overtrained looking back on it. But at the time, we just didn't know any better. We just kept hard charging.
Yeah, right. That overtraining aspect. I mean, typically, especially within military context, CrossFit really caught on, and it caught on because there's this high level of pain at the end, because we're all kind of masochists, especially the Army, right? Army loves just being in pain and suffering, right? So naturally, we've gravitated towards it. But at least personally, I miss that whole concept of progressive overload. Just go as hard as possible for as long as possible until things break. And that's what I've been seeing with a lot of the veterans that I'm coaching, is that they want to get back to that level, or they want to try to compete at that level where they're doing like 4 or 5 sessions a week, but they end up kind of overtraining, like you said. So, how did you maintain your body then? Was it just like massive amounts of calories, tons of sleep, or a combination thereof?
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously a little bit younger than I am now. My training volume looks a little bit different today than it did before. I do a lot of jiu-jitsu. I do some tactical work. I do a lot of CrossFit stuff. But so yes, it was consuming calories to allow me to produce so I wasn't like eating broccoli and chicken, right? I was eating whatever I could, whenever I could, because I was trying to consume enough calories to keep up with my energy, to keep up with the amount that I was expending. Especially, when you're running 20 miles, when you're swimming a mile, when you're doing these things and then lifting later, you're just trying to consume calories. And I think listening to your body was really important to me. Obviously, I would spend time mobilizing. I had a deep tissue guy that would come to my house twice a week, because that was my profession. My profession was to train to be good at the sport of CrossFit. And so my body was like that tool. And even today, in some ways, right, my body is that tool. I need to be aware that mobilization is important, and just being smart about the way I train, I think, is really key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, with respects to, if you could prioritize one modality of training as you move into like your next phase, your next phase, which is not being CrossFit Games champ, what would be something that you would prioritize right now? Would it be strength? Would it be cardio? Would it be, mobility? What do you think is the most important right now for you for longevity?
I mean, I think, obviously the answer is all the above, right? Like, I think for me, it's continuously developing skills more than anything. Like my engine, my strength, like I'm pretty solid because I've been training hard for 20 years, right? But learning new skills, I think, is critical for me right now. So I've been spending a lot of time on the range, learning new firearm skills. I've been spending a lot of time. Today, I'm actually going to go spar here in a little bit with stand-up Muay Thai, which I haven't done in about a year. So it's continuously trying to test my brain with my body. I think one thing that CrossFit does well is it neurologically connects your brain with your body. So you're not just talking about doing, traditional strength training. You're doing more things like dynamic, like snatching and double unders and stuff that really kind of like fuse your brain with your body. And when you stop doing those, or when you become really proficient at something, sometimes your body, it needs to be tested, at least for mine. I think jiu-jitsu unlocks that for me because it tests my brain with my body instead of just being like this aimless kind of bent over row type thing. You know what I mean? I think those are valuable for pure strength, 100%. Like, dude, I do them all the time. But there's something special about learning a new wrestling move that then unlocks this connection in your brain and your body.
That's a really interesting point. As a teacher, that's kind of what we're always trying to do, right? You're always trying to make those connections and then see like the light bulb moment where the kid's eyes light up. Be like, oh, I get it. Like, yeah, now you get
That's
it.
right.
Okay, cool. And so physically, same thing occurs, right? You make that neural connection, and you're talking jujitsu. I just started. I feel like I am going to get murdered every time, and I'm thinking about my right arm, and then if I'm with a blue belt or a purple belt, they're like, yeah, that right arm's in. Yeah, okay, think about it. But I'm now working your right leg, and I'm putting you into an ankle lock, and then I'm like getting your back. And it's just like, how do I think about all these things at once? But I understand that there's a progression, right? Like haven't yet made those neural connections. And yeah, I'm in the gym, I'm training, but I needed something where I could be in that physical space. And that's why I gravitated towards it, because the veteran space is really gravitating towards DJJ a lot, because there's a lot of research that's showing that doing that, a practice of being close with another guy in a dangerous situation, but also having the trust that we're not going to go so far as to actually kill each other, builds a lot of trust, brings you back into the fold of like regular civilian life, but also doing really hard shit allows your brain to rewire in a positive way. And I was just like, wow, I didn't realize how therapeutic something like Brazilian jiu-jitsu would be for a guy like myself who only had like a little bit of background in like hand-to-hand and some judo. So that's really interesting you mentioned that. I want to just touch on the mental prep a little bit more, getting to the games and being such a long-lasting athlete. You must have had some serious setbacks at some point. And so how do you mentally prepare? Because you're training for, it's not like a hockey player. You have 82 games in a year. You get injured, you got time to kind of recover. If it's not too bad, you get back in the season, then there's playoffs. But the games is a one-time event. And if you don't make regionals, sorry, come back next year. Or like you get to the games and you blow out an Achilles or something, like, sorry, come back next year. How do you get prepared for an event like that that's kind of like all or nothing?
Well, I mean, first off, you chose to get into that event, right? No one forced you to do anything. So you're choosing to compete in the sport. And with that comes a set of rule set, and you either like it or you don't. I mean, the same thing can be said about swimming. I mean, imagine swimming. You train your whole life to get to the Olympics and you lose by a fingernail. Like, that sucks, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's the sport, and that's what you get yourself into. And so for us, the sport is dynamic in the sense of like, dude, like, you got to show up. And if you don't show up at regionals, if you don't perform, like, you're out. And that's just the way it is. You know, I was fortunate to win my region 5 years in a row. And like, you know, that's hard to do. But the way you do it is by day-to-day training, right? Day-to-day earned confidence, day-to-day, session to session. Am I putting in the work so that when I show up at the regionals, I know that I'm the best out there because I've backed it up with, you know, a decade's worth of work. And that's the key, right? Is this earned confidence that, like, for example, today, I'm going to go hit rounds with just some straight killers on the mats, and then I'm going to go spar. And I'm earning my confidence every day as a dad to feel even more and more confident in a room that I could defend myself and defend my family. And those are things that are really important to me. So it's just a different avenue I'm taking from trying to earn my confidence to be the fittest on earth, where now I'm saying I want to just be the baddest dude in the room who's also the most compassionate. But those are the things I really care about right now.
So the quantitative and even qualitative evidence of I'm doing really well at this, but I also recognize that based on my data, I need to work on, let's say, this other thing, is how you kind of build in, just like you said. It's almost like if you have a weak moment where it's like, man, I'm not doing, you have literal proof that you can reference and say like, no, actually I'm doing really well.
Well, because you earned it.
Because you earned it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like for you, dude. So you were in the military for 15 years, right? You've put a lot of rounds downrange, and like, think about all the rounds you've sent at a shooting range, right? And so when you go and you're grabbing your rifle and you're trying to put, you know, rounds on a target, your confidence is not one of like boasted. Like, you're not like slapping yourself in the face all fired up. You know that you've put so many rounds in so many times that you know how to control your breath. You know how to put it down. And your confidence is there because you earned that confidence from thousands of hours doing it. That same thing applies to training in any skill set, and especially when you want to go compete. And in your case, obviously it's a little bit more heightened, or not a little bit, a lot more, because there could be a life and death situation aligned with it, right? But earning that confidence, I think, is really important. And if you think about the hierarchy of training, right? So you have like sleep and nutrition, gymnastics, weightlifting, blah, 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 blah. You want to look at across this hierarchy or against all these modalities and say, where am I weak? Where am I strong? How do I stay strong at my strengths, but also start to improve on my weaknesses? And that same thing can apply with anybody listening who's a dad or a mom out there, right? Look at like the pyramid of being a protector. like look at the pyramid of like being a human, whatever. At the baseline, you have to have a level of fitness. If you don't have a level of fitness cognitively, physically, emotionally, whatever, like you're in trouble, right? So you need to have mental fitness and physical fitness at the bottom. If you don't have that, like everything above it doesn't matter, right? And then above it, maybe you'll put combatives. How well are you at combatives? Then above that, maybe you'll put firearms. And then above that, maybe you'll put first aid. Or maybe first aid would come even above all those. But there would be this hierarchy you'd want to start to develop based on how often you think you might need it in real life. And I guess for me, where I would say is like at the bottom is fitness. The next one up would probably be first aid, your ability to support if something was going wrong. Above that would probably be combatives, and above that would be firearms, because the likelihood of you having to use a firearm is very slim versus having to use first aid or combatives.
I like how you've structured that. So at the base, the fitness standards, what would you say are some of the absolute like non-negotiable fitness standards that every person should have?
I mean, I think that every single person needs to be able to sprint at least 100 yards. You just have to. It's just a necessity of life. If you were in a really shitty situation, there's a recent video that's going viral on the internet where a semi truck comes off the side of the road and this lady grabs her baby and starts sprinting. If you don't have the ability to do that because you're too obese or too out of shape, like that's a big problem. There's also another video where a baby's in a cart.
Stroller.
Yeah. And it starts going towards the street and some random guy comes and helps because this woman couldn't get up.
I know,
and I'm not trying to shame that person. I'm just saying that like, if you're looking at it holistically, you need to be able to run, and at least for 100 yards, maybe not 400, but at least 100, right? You should be able to at least, sit down on something and stand back up without using support. Like you need to be able to get on the toilet and stand back up again. If you can't do that without using handles, like we have a problem. You need to be able to deadlift your body weight. Right? You need to be able to pick up off the floor something as heavy as you. And most importantly, you need to be able to get to the ground and get back up again. Those are like fundamentals that are non-negotiable.
Yeah. Very similar to what I've outlined as well. I listen a lot to Peter Attia. I love that guy. And his longevity standards, right? Hanging from a bar, for 2 minutes, farmers walks. So the sprint is probably for me the biggest one. That's my longevity standard is I want to be able to run down my grandkids. My kids are 7 and 4 right now. So I got a long ways to go, right? But what are all the steps I need to take in order to make sure that happens? It's not just, I'm just going to show up at 75 and go for a sprint. No, because the wheels will fall off. Because I'm assuming when you say 100-yard sprint, it's not in a certain time. It's all out effort for 100 yards, whatever time that takes, just so you don't end up pulling your hamstring, blowing your Achilles. These are all so important. And the sit to stand, all those things. But I love the deadlift because that is raw strength on the posterior chain, which for whatever reason, I don't know what happened over the last 30, 40 years because I'm kind of new to the whole like fitness game, but deadlifts have this weird boogeyman thing associated with them because it's like, you're going to hurt your back. I'm like, well, we don't say that about overhead press. We don't say that about bench press. We don't say that about squats. So I don't know what happened with deadlifting because it's such an important movement. We don't train it in. So like, why in your case, do you think like a body weight deadlift is so important?
You're watching, I double check this, but like the deadlift was called the health lift. I'm just typing it in to make sure I'm 99.9% sure. The health lift was a very simple exercise. Pile heavy objects on a machine and then lift it. So basically, was the deadlift called a health lift? Formerly called the health lift, the deadlift being no, more than the safe and sound. So I'll double check this, but yes, there was something called the health lift back in the day, and it was basically a deadlift. And I don't know why the name got changed, blah, 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 but it doesn't matter. It's because deadlift is a foundational posterior chain movement. Like, with appropriate midline stabilization, keeping your chest nice and tall and your low back flat and not having any type of isolated strain on a vertebrae, like, dude, you need to be able to pick stuff up. Like this whole idea that like, if you're, that's
the title of the podcast, by the way, dude, you need to be able to pick stuff up.
Like if you can't pick stuff up, like we have a fundamental problem. Like, and speaking about this from a longevity perspective, like if you're a grandma, if you're a grandpa out there, do you think that your kids are going to want you to watch their kids if you can't lift them up? Hell no. Like, dude, am I going to send my kid to someone that they cannot lift them up and put them in a car? God forbid they need to get to a hospital or whatever. No, absolutely not. And it's a prerequisite for life. And so if we're not spending time training that, the problem is the kids get bigger and the adults get older. And so those two things together start to really work. And like my son, dude, he's 9 years old. He's 112 pounds of just like straight up muscle. And the issue is that, I mean, I could pick him up, but I mean, he's heavy as hell, right? So those are the kind of things I think the deadlift starts to really play a big role in.
Okay. Yeah, I have to fundamentally totally agree on that front. And coming from a guy that was told by the military, don't lift anything more than 20 kilos basically for the rest of your life because I blew out my back. I think that's the biggest myth out there, that once you hurt your back, lifting things are now outside of your realm of competence, which I think is just it's such misplaced advice that I think it does so much more harm than good. And it's unfortunate, right? It's unfortunate.
It's super unfortunate. And this gets me like super fired up because, like my stepmother-in-law, she's torn her ACL twice, whatever. And so her immediate reaction is, don't do anything with my knee. It's like, dude, that's the complete opposite of what you need to be doing. Yeah. You need to be training and strengthening the ligaments, the muscles, the tissues, so that, if you put your knee in an awkward position walking up the stairs, you're not going to tear it again. Same thing with your back. Like this idea that, don't lift anything. It's just not practical. Instead, the answer should be, hey, I want you to go to physical therapy. I want you to go to a gym. I want you to slowly, with pain-free, work your way up to strengthen up your low back. Like smartly. I'm not telling you to go lift 200 pounds tomorrow, but this idea that you shouldn't lift more than 40 pounds or 20 kilos is just so unfortunate that society has gotten into a place where the answer to issues is just not doing it because it's just not the reality of life. Like, dude, your kids are probably, are both your kids over 40 pounds now?
Oh yeah. My son's in the high 60s and he's just pushing 7. And my daughter is 40 something and she's 4.
Right. So what would happen if you had kept that advice? Like all of a sudden your daughter wants to go play in the pool and you want to throw her up, but you can't do it because you just don't have the prerequisite strength. So these are things that I think are incredibly important for longevity, is recognizing that a lot of this stuff that comes out from the quote unquote scientists or doctors is just, I think it's really misinformation, to be honest. It's really sad.
Yeah. I'd have to say so as well. One thing that Kelly Starrett said that really stuck with me when we're having a chat on podcast is like, when you start talking about taking care of yourself, being healthy and being strong, we're being subversive these days, because the general mainstream advice is what we're talking about here. Take it easy, go sit down, take some pills, maybe get surgery. Okay, well, really, is that practical like you just said? No, absolutely not. At some point, there's going to be a moment that you're going to have to actually react, do something, and then you're going to realize, oh shit, like that woman that couldn't chase after her daughter, which gave me so much anxiety. I watched it once. I'm like, I can't watch that again. But it was a very, very, very strong reminder. And it was on every, fitness influencer's feed. Like, you got to freaking sort your shit out. And whether it costs $1,000 to do it, $0, it doesn't matter. Take the time to fix what is needed to be fixed. And if it's obesity, fix it. If it's strength and conditioning, fix it, because those are the moments that you literally need it for. It's not the, CrossFit Games necessarily. 99.9% of people are not going to do it. It's the general everyday stuff. So that actually
especially if you're a dad.
Yeah,
like
and that's dad, perfect. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Well, it's like I just don't have sympathy for you. I just don't. Like, and I'm sorry for being so, straight up. I just don't. I don't feel bad for you. I feel bad for the fact that like you chose to have kids. And with that choice comes a lot of responsibility, and you're working your ass off as a dad to provide for your family. You're doing all these different things, but you also want to be there for them, and you want to show up, and you want to have the energy for them. And I think that if you're not taking the time to take care of yourself, even for 15 to 20, 30 minutes a day, I think you're just missing out, man. You're missing out on this unlocked potential of not only like the physical gifts, but also like representing your kids, what hard work is, and just so many layers, man. It's just, anyways, I can go on and on. I just think that if you're a dad out there, I understand there's a struggle. I understand there's work and it's busy. And yes, I own gym, so it's easier for me. Sure. But it doesn't mean you don't have 15 to 30 minutes a day to go do some burpees, push-ups, and air squats in your garage. You know,
Yeah, I would contend, hey, like dads out there that are listening to this, like, oh man, yeah, I just can't find the time. Okay, take out your phone, go into the app, go look at screen time. I guarantee it's at least an hour. Okay, so now you got your time. All of a sudden, wow, you have an hour. Okay, so go do a freaking set of Tabatas. You know, like it's all at your fingertips. It's just you got to actually have that. For me, it's fear, right? Fear of not being able to take care of my kids in a shitty situation, not being able to get help. Those are all the things that really shifted when I had kids, and then I had a really bad back flare up, and I realized if this happens, once I'm at the park. Once I'm at the park and my kid now, like there's nobody around to kind of take care of him. I'm incapacitated and I'm useless. Now what? Now I can't be in that situation. So I realized I need to take control of this. So that's fitness, 100% fitness, mobility, all the stuff that comes with it. So I'm glad we segued into that, to being a dad, because you had a great conversation with Josh Bridges not too long ago. I think you just published a podcast a few days ago, right? And you're chatting about things like dad bod and being physically fit and talking about your kids and getting them into jiu-jitsu and training them hard. So I love the message. So let's just start with that whole concept of dad bod, because I think we need to define it, because it relates to what we're talking about here, and just what's happened to a lot of dads and a lot of men just in general have kind of let themselves go. So what was your thesis on that? Like what's the issue with dad bod, and what do you think it is essentially?
So my original thesis was like dad bod isn't good. And I've had a shift on my mindset on that. So I think what we need to do as a group of men is reframe what the dad bod is. So when people think about dad bod right now, it's almost like a joke. Like, hey, that guy's got a dad bod. And it's almost like we almost joke about it in a way that makes it acceptable, meaning a little soft, a little out of shape, a little sedentary. Like that's what people think about when like a dad bod. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Just like that guy on the screen, right?
Pulling
That's
it
what
up
people
on the
think about.
screen, yeah. No muscle mass. Yeah, just
right. But the problem was, and this is something I didn't get until I got it, was that by us kind of not making fun of, like not like by us saying that this is the dad bod, we're putting it on a pedestal as like this is the dad bod. And I would actually flip it around. And after more thought on this, like the dad bod should be a physically fit, independent, strong male. That should be the dad bod. That should be the standard. And this other version of it should be the soft dad bod. Like the idea that the idea that the dad bod has this connotation that's okay. I just think it's really unfortunate. So we I made him. So on YouTube, essentially we had put this like dad bod thing with Josh Bridges. And then later on I said, hey, I made a mistake, because originally I was thinking a dad bod is exactly what we're talking about. But everybody has a dad bod. You have a dad bod. I have a dad bod. Everybody has a dad bod. I'm like, the bod that I have is not that. So we need to reframe the way we look at dad bod, is I guess the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, that's a great point. The reframing of what really caught on in popular culture, because the whole concept was, I'm just reading Wikipedia to do a little bit of research. The research that was done on it was kind of was an article that was written basically by a blogger. It wasn't necessarily something that was in the British Medical Journal. It was just kind of a joke that, hey, ladies kind of really like the dad bod. And then it kind of caught fire, where there's a lot of commentary made like, well, that's bullshit. And well, like women don't want a guy that's too fit. Besides the point that, okay, it's a pop culture thing. What you're bringing up here is really valid. If you're not physically fit, like if you're physically fit, you're going to see it in your body. The guy that I just put up there, you could tell there's very little muscle mass on that individual, right? And so what does that do? That reduces your ability to defend and protect. Now, for me, I take that seriously. You take that seriously. So then when we need to redefine things, like how do we go about it? Is it something that you think individuals like yourself, like doing the podcast, getting to more and more dads out there to kind of reframe how they think about their fitness and health? Like, where do you think the strategy is there? Because we've kind of lost the plot a lot here, at least in Canada and in the US as well. So where do we even start? Like, is it podcasts? Where do we go here?
Oh man. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find any guy, especially guys that are listening to this, any guys that would say that they do not want to be strong, independent, and not have to have somebody take care of them. Like it would be very impossible for me to find a guy who says they don't want to be able to protect their family. They don't want to be able to do physical tasks. That those things are not important to them. Like I just can't think of a single person I know who has kids or even doesn't have kids who says that being able to do physically fit things isn't important to them. I just like everybody should have the physical capability to go do things that they want to go do. And I think that needs to be the standard. Like the standard needs to get back. So like, dude, if you watch some of these old PE videos and stuff,
Insane.
like our youth used to be so jacked. And now the pendulum's totally swung too far. Where like, if I'm not mistaken, I think 70% of military age men in the United States are uneligible for the military because of obesity. And that's a problem. That's a national defense issue. Mm-hmm. But in so many ways, it's more of like this social stigma that it's acceptable. I just think that it's very unfortunate. So I guess my advice for anybody listening would be like, what is your standard? What is your standard? What do you want to be able to do? And for me, I want to be able to live freely and live fully. What that means is I want to go do whatever the hell I want, whenever I want, either because of necessity or because of something I desire to do. And I always want to be able to say yes to my kids. So if they want to go swim, if they want to go run, if they want to go do any physical task, I always want to be able to say yes. And if you can't do that, I imagine that's still important to you. I imagine most people would agree with what I just said. But if you can't do that, that's the motivation to get rid of the dad bod. That's the motivation to be, that's the dad bod 2.0.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. That's a really good message. To be able to live freely and what was the next step? And live freely.
Fully. Like live free and live full. Like, dude, think about it. Like, imagine like my son every day comes home from school. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. If you don't have the energy for them, like that sucks. Like, and you can't get that back, man. Like, if you cannot get that back. And if they want to go do something, if they want to go climb a hill and you can't do it, if you need to climb over a fence to go play a game of catch on a baseball field, but you can't do it, like that sucks. Yeah. Like, let's go,
Yeah, 100%. And so I wanted to now touch on the third part of your standards. You got your fitness standards, first aid, and combatives. That's initially what really kind of caught my interest on Threads, where you did a post with your daughter. I believe your daughter's just close to being a teenager. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but you've been training with her for, it seems like, quite a while, and she seemed like she can really handle herself because you weren't going that easy, to be honest. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And, I got my son involved in BJJ at the same time that I got involved because I'd never done it before. And I want him and my daughter to have the capacity to defend themselves and fight and then build that inner confidence, because that's something I didn't have growing up. Although I had the opportunity, I just wasn't encouraged to do it. I want to encourage my kids to do it because I see the value in it. So in the episode you did with Josh Bridges, you mentioned, you want your daughter to be able to fight off that initial aggressor. And I 100% believe in that as well. One of my things that I've said kind of jokingly, but I'm serious, is, when my daughter is in, her teens, 20s, and, she wants to go out and she wants to wear like a, nice skirt, whatever, go to the clubs. I'm like, you can go out with that. However, you need to prove to me that you can mess up the first guy that is going to come your way and try to start something with you. If you can do that, you can wear whatever you want and we'll have no problems whatsoever, because I know it's a dangerous world out there. And my son as well. I know, guys have a huge chance of getting severely injured, if not killed, especially at a young age, due to a physical altercation with some random guy, be it at a bar, doesn't matter. Like I've been in dust ups, since I was, in my late teens and 20s being in the military. These are things that happen, but I had to rely on just my basic knowledge of being big to actually fight, but I didn't have any background. I want my kids to have that background, have that confidence. Why is it for you so important that, you want your kids to be very proficient at combatives and fighting?
I mean, I think you're already saying it. I mean, I think that anyone who doesn't want that for their kids, I struggle to understand that. I cannot relate to someone who doesn't think it's an important skill to be able to defend themselves. I can't relate to that. And that's okay, right? And so the question I'd ask anybody is, when you were in high school, when you were in college, and you saw a male bully somebody, what attributes did that person have in general? In general, what I noticed is that that person was insecure, truly insecure. And they took that insecurity out on other people. And that's why they ended up bullying. That's what I found. So when it comes to my son, the number one goal that I have is to make sure that he is confident in his abilities and comfortable. And that, I believe, will lead him to never, ever, ever, at any circumstance, be a bully, and also be able to be a protector for those people who can't stand up for themselves. And so for my son, the attributes that I'm looking for is to be the compassionate, loving individual but is also straight up skilled. There's no other way to describe it. He's been doing firearms training since he was 5. And he's been doing combatives every week since he was 5. So those are skills that I find to be very important, especially in a male, so that he does become the person that I look to in the future as a loving, compassionate individual who could also defend themselves and defend others. Those are very important skills for him that I deeply care about 10 years looking back on and saying that I, as a dad, did a good job exposing him to those. Now, my goals for Ava are completely different. And yes, there is a double standard here because I do not need her to be able to defend. I don't need her to be able to stand up for other people. I need her to be able to defend herself. That's it. I will teach Caden how to control somebody in positions. I'll teach him submissions from rear naked chokes to arm bars to kimuras to side control. And I'll teach him takedowns because at one point he will be a bigger individual. Ava will not be. My daughter will not be a huge individual. You and I will always be bigger than her, period.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of her being able to mount a guy, side control a guy, or armbar them is not important for me. What is important for me is because she's not worried about sport jiu-jitsu, which is a totally different conversation. If she was, then we'd pursue that. What I'm interested in is if someone puts their hands on you and you do not want them on you, you need to act so violently, so aggressively, so well trained that they immediately realize that they're touching and talking with the wrong person and they're leaving the situation. So that's what we focus on there versus over here, which is 2 different goals because they're 2 different people,
Yeah. Yeah. That, you said a lot there that rings true for me too. The moment where you have to realize that violence is the next way forward has to be at 100%. There's no half measures. And that's something I learned in the military. And that's something I want to convey to my children as well. When this opportunity comes, it has to be at 100%. Now, it doesn't mean you go kill somebody, but it means that, like you said, they know, oh shit, I messed with the wrong guy or the wrong girl. And that sets the tone. And the other thing I want to touch on too is that whole aspect of being dangerous, right? That's a quote that I love from Jordan Peterson, where a good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. Because let's be honest, if you look at it like a culture like the Spartans or any other great warrior culture, right? If you look at the ninjas or the samurai from Japan, they had this honor code because they knew that everybody was freaking dangerous. Everybody was dangerous. So there's a mutual respect, and they were able to keep things in line. Because I'm not going to. When I'm outside the house, everybody gets respect. I don't know. You might be the biggest assassin on the planet, and I'm not going to want to cross you because I have no qualms with you, man. But it seems like we've got to the point where this idea of being able to fight, being able to bring violence in a situation that's required is seen as, call it toxic, or you want to call it just uncivilized. I don't know. I get this impression that it's kind of unwanted, where the whole idea is like violence isn't the answer. But in reality, if somebody's being violent with you, what are you going to do? Right. And, I've seen it before. You just see like turtling, or you just see like an inability to kind of deal with the situation. And I don't want that for my kids. And I think you share the same philosophy on that.
So things that we do, right, on a regular basis, like this is very tactical. So with my son, I will grapple with him. I will wrestle with him. I will work takedowns. I will work submissions. That's what we work. And I have a skill set that I could be able to do that. If you don't have a skill set and you're listening to this, go find a great coach.
Right.
Now, with my daughter, there are some things I think that a general person can do. I will walk up to her. I will grab her wrists hard, and I will see if she can grip break. So she as she pulls back, she's pushing forward hard, like immediately, especially with one. Because if you can control the wrist, if you can control the head and the wrist are very difficult once someone has your control. So as soon as someone touches your child on the wrist, they learn how to break it immediately. I grab her from behind the waist and I will work with her on hip, pushing her hip forward and basically long and short of it, getting out of that position. I will work with her on, I'm walking up and I'm being loud. I'm not even being loud. I'm just walking up. I'm being aggressive. And I will work with her on pushing me so hard in my chest and being so loud and aggressive that then she could run, right? Those are things you could work on, to be loud, be violent, be aggressive immediately. And I work from 3 different positions, from the front, from the grips, and then from the back. And you could work a lot of different positions. If you don't have self-defense combat experience or a combatives experience, go find a local coach that can help you with those things. But those are skills that I believe every young lady should have.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I wish it was part of the school curriculum. I know growing up, which I'm thinking back to high school, we had this base level of, if you want to call it self-defense, martial arts. I don't know if it was part of the curriculum or if it was just because we had one of my chemistry teacher was actually, I don't know if he was a black belt in jiu-jitsu at the time, because it doesn't seem to make sense. It was in the 90s. I don't think anybody was a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, just the Gracies. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what he practiced, but he had a very good background in whatever it was. And he used to teach us all, and he used to show us like grips, and he used to show us like break falls and everything like that, and just basically how to get out of shitty situations. And I thought that was really awesome, but I haven't heard of anything like that since, which is unfortunate. So, as a teacher, as a former teacher in the high school system, it was just something that I wish our curriculum would kind of start to implement, things that are more practical, like combatives, fitness, health, nutrition. You're just talking about, back in the day, like the president was the President Kennedy's fitness challenge back in the day was, I don't think, like you said, I don't think
presidential fitness test, I think it was called.
And you get like an award or something like that. Those are the standards that I wish we had here too in Canada. Why don't we set the bar really high? Because I guarantee you, if you start setting a bar, people will try to rise to it. We changed it here in Canada too with our military. We changed our fitness standards. We went to a different model and we started issuing gold or platinum, gold, silver, bronze. And guess what? People want to get platinum. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's a cool thing to have. Because it's like, hey, I worked my ass off to get here. Because that's what human beings like to do. They like to achieve things. But if you set the bar too low, then you just wash everybody out and you go, well, why bother? And that's really unfortunate. That's really, really unfortunate. You don't have to be like elite athlete, but you can just strive for something that is a little bit harder than what everybody else is willing to do. And then you get rewarded for it and you can show it off and get recognition.
Yeah, it's difficult, man. You talk to like NYPD and these other departments and they're having a tough time getting recruits. And so the answer to some of the times is to reduce the standard. And I just think long term, that's just not the right way. You got to create a culture where it's just a bunch of badasses who are trying to level up. And I think that if you don't create that in the long run, we're going to continue to have more and more issues on this. And I just think that hopefully the pendulum is swinging back. I just think we need more people to be speaking like this, that it's okay to expose our children to hard things. It's actually a good thing. And it's a great thing, especially in the social media day and age, to expose your children to hard things, because life will get hard. They will face adversity. And it should be our job as parents to expose them to adversity in a very effective, safe manner, because in the future, they're not. Like I'm a big believer that if our kids are hitting hard workouts, if they're training group sports, if they're doing combatives, if they're doing these hard things, when life throws them a curveball, break up with your significant other, whatever, right? They're going to be more conditioned to handle it than if we just spent our entire lives trying to make their life as comfortable as possible. I just think we're doing them a huge disservice.
I totally agree. And I think that's really one of the issues that we need to tackle to start stemming or start turning the tide on the mental health crisis with our kids, right? It's bad, man. It's really bad. I mean, suicide is the number one killer of kids up until the age of like 18, which is insane. Like it used to be accidents, but now it's suicide, and then young men too. It's just off the charts, and it's just anxiety. I didn't even know what the word was when growing up, because that wasn't a thing. We didn't talk about anxiety. We didn't talk about, no, of course I had it, but for me it was just pre-test stress, or my girlfriend's breaking up with me, or just typical kid stuff. But now we have this anxiety machine But I was also out doing hard football workouts, right? I was also out doing hard hockey workouts. I was always doing something physically hard.
Yep.
And for, as a dad, and, I wouldn't call myself an expert dad, I've only got 7 years experience. But one thing that kind of flipped for me was, oh, wait, if I want to tell my kids, you got to get out and you got to get after it, you got to do hard stuff and you got to prove yourself. If I'm not physically doing it myself, then I'm a hypocrite. And they're going to be like, yeah, but Dad, what are you doing? You didn't chase after your dreams. And so I got into business. It sucks, but it's amazing at the same time. I did the Ironman. It sucked, but I did it anyways. These are things that I hope end up being just these benchmarks where I go, well, you know what? If I can do it, you can do it too. And that's kind of where I'm trying to set the standard. So
I'll take it a step further. I mean, think about it this way. Like you say to your kids, hey, Dad's hard at work, right? But they don't really know what that means. Like, so for example, for all intents and purposes, you're working right now, right? Let's just say. Right. But they have no idea. Like they listen to you on a microphone or they see you on a computer, like, okay, Dad's working. It's like, dude, there's nothing like, or like you're at the office. Oh,
I'm not mining coal. Like,
there's no, that's right. You're not mining coal. You're not building a house, right? That's legit work where you're saying, hey, look, Dad built that over the last 6 months. Instead, because the society has shifted so much, I feel like it's our responsibility to be able to show kids what hard work is. And I just don't think you could show them physical hard labor anymore for most people most of the time. Now there's exceptions to the rule, right? But in general, you might need to just show them hard work in a triathlon. You might need to show them hard work in the garage. They might need to know that you're sweating your ass off with your buddies at the gym. And those are things I think instill hard work that we've lost because it's hard for kids to distinguish hard work when you're typing on a computer.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I took a break from jiu-jitsu for about 6 months. I got back last week and my son has been going continuously. He's been competing. It's been awesome. And I said last week, hey, my son's name's Xavier, I'm going back this week. I haven't seen him that fired up in a really long time. He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, thanks, man. Like, thanks. Like that, I wasn't expecting him to be so fired up, but it got me fired up because clearly for him, it's like, man, Dad's doing it too. And he really wants to be able to fight me, in a one-on-one battle. And he's like, I'm going to get a gray belt and I'm going to work my way up. And, I know eventually if he keeps it up at this rate, by the time he gets to like 12, 13, he's going to be able to give me a run for my money. And I can't wait for that day. And that's why I encourage him to keep on going. And that's why I want to do it with him because I want to progress with him because part of what I want to do is also have these shared experiences where I'm literally a white belt with him. I didn't get to do that with my dad, right? I didn't get to have this experience where he knows nothing and then I get to grow with him. And I just thought that was a novel way to kind of progress with my kids as to show them, hey, Dad doesn't know everything either, but I'm going to work and struggle and do it with you and try to get to the next level. So Jason, I wanted to ask you, now that you're moving into the next phase, what does a lot of your training look like now? Because, you're focusing a lot on longevity and, being fit 2.0. So what does that look like? Are you still going to the gym 7 days a week or are you doing, a lot more low intensity stuff with some combatives? And what was the typical like day to day or week to week look like for you now?
No, I mean, I probably train harder than I train hard. Like I train hard. I train.
You can tell.
I train every day. Yeah. I train hard. Like, so I'm either in our gyms taking class or I'm in the garage just getting after it. And then I'm doing jiu-jitsu 3-4 days a week. So I do jiu-jitsu 3-4 days a week. I do CrossFit pretty much every day. And then typically like this Saturday, I'm doing a men's club meeting. So I'm hosting a ruck for all the men and we're going to go on like an hour-long ruck. So I'd say it's that, man. It's just like, I'm super fired up right now. Like my birthday's coming up in 2 weeks. I'm turning 38 and I feel like I'm just hitting my stride. I really do. Like I feel like I'm just hitting my stride in terms of training and understanding and, life circumstances. Like I've learned a lot over the last, my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. What was it? In 2016. And, for those next few years, like, dude, we dealt with a lot of just like really heavy stuff. And so now it's like we're kind of coming out of the other side and we're fired up, dude. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's awesome. That's awesome here. Glad to hear that your daughter's doing a lot better. I can only imagine what kind of kick in the nuts that must have been to have a kid that's sick. I mean, I get anxious when they have just a serious flu. Yeah, it's like, oh, is this it? Oh, and you get that kind of anxious belly, and especially when you're a new dad and new mom, you just everything is, oh my God, this is it. And I can't imagine what that's like. I had my best friend actually have his son went through cancer as well, and he's come out the other side super healthy as well. But the stress is just is unreal. So I mean, obviously that must have been really trying for you, and it's cool to see that your mindset and your ability to push through hard things in the physical realm likely translated in the psychological realm as well.
100%, man. 100%.
Wicked. So Jason, it's been a real hoot chatting to you, man. It's like I said earlier, man, it's cool to just think about who I want to have on the podcast, and then they actually show up here and we get to have a cool conversation. Where can people start, downloading your content? I showed your YouTube page, but what do you got going on, and what would you like to share with those that are listening?
I mean, look, we're working on YouTube. Obviously, we want to grow that, but I think our big things are the Jason Khalipa podcast. We have a Never Zero newsletter. If you can find it, like basically, if someone follows me on Instagram at Jason Khalipa, in the link in bio, you can find all kinds of cool stuff. But our newsletter is weekly. It's every Wednesday. It's badass. It's really geared towards like the hard charger dad or mom who wants to just level up. And join that and check out the podcast. That's it.
All right. I'm just pulling this up now. Never Zero. We got it on Instagram here. That's it right there. Never Zero. So to follow NC Fit.
Oh, no. You can follow NC Fit, but go to Jason Khalipa.
Jason Khalipa. Okay. We'll pop that up there, and we'll put that into the show notes and get that sorted for you, so that folks, you can go head over. If you're listening just on audio only, all the links will be there in the show notes, so you can definitely get into Jason's brain a little bit deeper on a weekly basis. So Jason, thanks so much, man. This has been a real hoot. Appreciate your insights, man. It's cool to see what you're doing in the fitness community, and that you're training some new hard chargers, possibly some new CrossFit Games champs in the future. So thanks so much for being a great guest, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Awesome. And folks, don't forget, stay tuned for the next one, and train hard, fight easy. Peace. I hate t-shirts that get floppy in the arms after 10 washes. So that's why I created a bunch of t-shirts with high quality cotton just for you, so that you can go to the gym and look fresh, sport some philosophy, and smash those PRs looking good. So you need to head to davemorrow.net/merch, grab yourself a hat, grab yourself a t-shirt, grab yourself a sweater, and support the cause today.